Hi everyone, welcome back to part 2 of our head wrap tutorial. If you missed part 1, part 2 assumes that you have already purchased and prepared 2 yards of cotton or similar fabric of your choice. If you are just starting out your sewing journey and you need help knowing how to purchase your fabric or prepare it to be cut and sewn, please go back and watch part 1 of this video. Otherwise, let's get ready to cut and sew. So once we have our fabric purchased and pre-washed, it's time to lay it out and cut it. This is the fabric I chose that I'm going to be working with and demonstrating today. There are a couple of sewing terms, important ones, that I want to teach you today for the sake of cutting this. When we lay out our fabric, there's a way that we want to lay it out. It probably came folded when you purchased it, but it's not folded anymore once you have washed it. The first thing you need to know is the difference between the right side of a fabric and a wrong side of the fabric. Yes, that probably sounds odd, but it won't when you see it. The right side of the fabric is usually the side that is the most finished, the pretty side that we wear on the outside. So, like this is the right side of this fabric. The wrong side of the fabric is the side that usually goes inside, like this. When we cut our head wrap, we are going to want to lay it out wrong side up. Most of the time when you're cutting things, it's gonna need to be laid out wrong side up, unless your guide sheet tells you otherwise, but that's another topic for another day. We want to lay this wrong side up. The other thing you're gonna want to know is where the selvages are in the fabric. So the selvage, if you look closely at the fabric you just bought, is going to be that kind of stiff, more tightly woven edge at the very edge of your fabric. It may even have some writing on it that tells you like where the fabric was made. It might have some color dots, just depends on the fabric. But that is your selvage edge they put on the fabric at the factory, basically to keep it from unraveling. Now, selvages are sometimes used, we'll take a look at them to know where the grain of the fabric is, but I use them sometimes to make sure my fabric is even as well. When you go to the cutting counter, you probably saw the big table and it probably had a groove in it, right? That was supposed to help the employee at the table cut it straight across, perpendicular to that selvage. That does not always happen. So it's nice to see the selvage and be able to line it up to help me know whether my fabric is indeed straight. Okay, so we want to lay out our fabric wrong side up. Now you've already done yourself a favor at the cutting counter by getting this fabric cut 2 yards long. It'll already be 72 inches this way. What we're concerned about is cutting this down to the width we need it to be. So if you're working with a piece of fabric that was on the wider side, like a 60-inch wide piece of fabric, then what you'll need to do is find the end of your fabric, take whatever measuring instrument you chose. You're gonna need to take that and mark out 22 find your 22 inches and mark that out. And then you want to go lengthwise. Uh-oh, where's my marking? Yeah, then you'll want to go lengthwise and mark out the 22-inch edge all the way down. Now, if you did what I did and bought a 45-inch piece of fabric, I can show you a shortcut. So once again, let's do some simple math. We want this fabric to be 22 inches wide, right? 45 divided by 2 is 22 and a half. We have 45-inch fabric. That ½ inch extra isn't gonna kill anybody. As a matter of fact, it actually makes for a great seam allowance all the way around. So what we'll do is flip this fabric over on the right side, and we're gonna find those selvages we just talked about on this side and this side, and we are going to meet them together all the way down. To make this easier, I'm actually going to stick some pins here and there just to keep them together temporarily. All right, and as I get down this piece of fabric, I'm actually going to pick it up and kind of shake it out. But I'm going to take those pins and just gradually intersperse them down the edge of this fabric. And once I get to the end of that fabric, I'm just gonna kind of shake it out a little bit. I will take the fold here on the opposite side of the selvage. I'm gonna press that just so that I have a clear boundary, and I'll cut on the fold. And what I should be left with is 2 perfectly cut 22.5-inch wide pieces of fabric, and then I'll be ready to sew. So once we get all the way to the end of our fabric, if you chose to pin or clip or whatever to hold your fabric together, we're just gonna kind of shake it to try to encourage that fold to settle. Lay it out, and we're actually going to press the fold for a clear guide. But once you have that pressed, you just go in and you'll cut straight down the middle of the fold. So you should have 2 perfectly cut 22.5-inch wide by 72 pieces of fabric. You can make 1 scarf for yourself, 1 to give away, or what I like to do is actually make matching face masks. There is an awesome easy tutorial by Homemade on our homestead. I'll stick a card up here and probably a link in the description bar in case you're interested in doing that. But let's sew. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take the raw edge of one of the long sides of your fabric and press it in. Now, if you're having trouble with your fabric unraveling, you can either take your pinking shears and cut the edges all the way down to help stop that, or you can run a zigzag stitch all the way down with your machine. I'm not going to worry about it because we're going to be tucking the raw edges in, but you've got some options. So in this case, for our hem, I recommend turning in between a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch, no more than that. In this case, this is the side where I left the selvage on. So I just basically took my selvage, turned it in, and pressed it. You can measure if you want to, but for what this is, I wouldn't make too big a deal out of it. It's entirely up to you. So we're going to turn our fabric once, and then to hide the raw edges, we're going to turn that fabric again and press like so. So again, turn that once, press, turn twice, press again all the way down. And remember, we are starting with the long edges of our fabric. Once you have your fabric pressed and prepared, it really shouldn't get away from you. You can pin it, but to me, the juice isn't really worth the squeeze. Hopefully you guys can see this. My hem is actually deep enough for me to line the edge of my presser foot with the fold, the outer fold of my fabric. And I'm just going to sew straight down. One tip my grandmother always reminds me of that I still have to remember from time to time is that this presser foot is guiding the material through. So if you're just starting out, don't pull your fabric. Let the machine do the work. Just let it go. So this is what you should have on that first long side of your fabric. Then I'm going to go in and repeat that on the opposite long edge. Let's look at the opposite side from a different angle, shall we? So now that we have two finished long edges, we'll repeat the process on the short sides. All right, so once you have finished hemming all four sides of your fabric and cut away any straggly loose threads, you should have a finished piece that looks like this. And since I'm going to wear mine today, I'm going to go ahead and tie it for you. One of my favorite, easiest ways to tie is to Rest my scarf behind my head. Tie it once in the front. Take one side, twist and roll, and tuck my ends within my little roll there, and repeat on the opposite side. I think some people have referred to this as like the double rolls, but I love how easy and quick that is to put together. And there you have it. So I hope that this was a good, easy to follow tutorial for anyone who is just starting to sew or wanting to learn and perhaps a little bit intimidated by the process, or even somebody who has been sewing a while like me and just wants a quick stress relieving product to scratch that sewing itch, or style and sewing journey if you have one. And as always, y'all, like, comment, and subscribe, please. And remember, do what you love what you do, and try something new. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.